can refer back to, we are going to put in the front a table of contents. Now let me go ahead and give you a few qualifications. So let's start with our composition book and then we'll talk about our spiral. Good time. First of all, at some point tonight, I need your name on the front cover, whether on the inside or on the outside. Whether on the inside or on the outside of the front cover. If you have one of those, it's like that's the smooth one and not like the more cardboardy paper one. Hopefully you got one that you can actually write on the inside or on the outside in Sharpie or something like that. But I need your name. I'm not going to stress about the class. As I get to know you guys better, I'll know exactly what class you're in. You're totally fine. But I do need your name on there somewhere. Sharpie would be best so it's nice and clear, but I need it somewhere in the front cover. Okay, after that, since mine is grid ruled, I had to go ahead and kind of make my own guidelines. You guys don't have to if it's like a college ruled, line ruled sort of thing. But I do want title of the first page to be table of contents. Some people choose to be really creative and they have their color pens and they do all this like color coding for their table of contents. It's up to you. It depends on your personality. If you just want to do pencil, table of contents, get it down, it's fine. But I do want table of contents. Then I do want you to go ahead and keep track of a few different things. First of all, I do want you to have the chapter and the chapter title. I always forget to type it in. Functions and their properties. There we go. I spelled that right. Why did it make it red? Functions and their properties. I do want you to get the chapter down. So whenever we start a new chapter, you have to put a new chapter heading. I do want you to indent just a little bit. If you have grid ruled, that's super easy. If you don't have grid ruled, it'll be a little bit harder. I do want you to indent a little bit. I want you to keep track of the section numbers and the section titles for each section that we do in notes. And then over here on the far right, those of you doing college ruled, wide ruled, you might be able to use your pink guidelines to kind of help you organize stuff a little bit. But I do want you to go ahead and put a page number. So all we're doing is on the very first page of our composition notebook, we're setting it up, table of contents at the top. Every time we start a new chapter, you are writing that chapter heading. Then you're doing the section number. Followed by the section title. And then a page number. Now, here's a quick little dilemma. Is your composition book numbered? Mine neither. So what do we need to do? We have to get numbers in. Now, really quickly, hold on, pause. There's going to be a lot of sections this year. And you just skip one whole page, 2 whole pages, and if you're going to be skipping lines in between chapters or doing things artistic in your table of contents or writing bigger, or you have wide rule, skip 3. Skip at least 2. If you're going to be spacing things out, maybe skip a third. Then, this, page 1 of your notebook. Bottom right-hand corner is great. If you would rather upper right-hand corner, totally fine. Long story short, I don't want any page numbers ever right next to the spine. Make sure they're on the outside of the pages. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it's way too hard to see. Now, if this is page 1, you choose right now. I'm only going to write on the front side of my notes because I don't like it when they're front to back, the pencil smears, whatever. Some people are like that. You could go ahead and have this page 1. You're not going to write on the back and make this page 2. But most people trying to save space and not have to buy lots of notebooks. So, page 1 on the back, you're going to keep writing. Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. You have a fun thing to do while you watch Netflix. What? No one does that during the week. Anyway. Keep going. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, etc., etc. If you're like, I'm going to number every other page, I'll take things off. I'll number every 10 pages. Yeah, that's even worse. Number every single page. That way we can quickly, I can quickly, you can quickly find your place in your notes if you're about to go back and refer it. Questions for Josh? Go ahead. Oh, you got it. Can I have you guys do one more thing for me? Turn to the very back of your composition book. the very back. I don't know. I guess I could do like grading when I grade your notebooks. I guess I could put grades in the notes. I think that's really messy. And it kind of just, ruins the work you guys have put into making those a nice resource. I'm going to put the grades every chapter right back here. So I'm going to go ahead and have you guys do something for me. I'm going to have you in the very back put chapter. I didn't write it on mine, but put chapter as like a heading. But if you want to make a line, you totally can. If you want to make it like a nice grid for me to fill in, I don't mind that at all. But chapter and grading. That's where I'm going to be grading. I just want to let you guys know. Sometimes it gets a little confusing, and if it's test day, and like, where's the grade for my notes, I'd rather just tell you now. So in the back, chapter and grade, and that's where I'm going to put it. Does that make sense? All right, kiddos, that is your composition book. We're going to get back to this in just a second in order to take I forgot the history. There you go. Coming back. We're going to come back to our notes in just a second. We are taking notes for section 1-1 today, but let's go ahead and pause, and let's also set up our spiral notebook. If you have it, let's go and get this one set up as well. Okay, spiral notebook. It's going to be for homework, and we talked about this during syllabus day. Once again, I need your name, preferably in Sharpie, somewhere clear on the cover, either on the outside or on the inside. You need somewhere clear. If it's black, I can take a label on it or something, or a sticker. Something that has your name on it so I can clearly see, okay? I need you guys to, I have two folders. Okay, coming back. First page. Don't have that in here. I want you guys to write table of contents. Don't worry, it's not as bad as the notes. First page. Table of contents, very similar to this. However, for your spiral, I only want you to show me chapters. That's it. Not sections. Ain't nobody got time for that, right? For your homework, all you do is put the chapter, and then the chapter's page numbers. This is where that chapter's homework starts. Does that make sense? So you're going ahead and putting in table of contents, you're putting in chapter 1, functions and their properties, and then page 1, because that's the first chapter of homework that you're going to have in your book. Okay? You don't need to skip any pages because you're only doing chapter 1 through, we have chapter 12. There's plenty of space for chapter 1 through 12 on the first side. Okay? So chapter 1, page 1, don't skip any extra pages, just that one for table of contents is page 1. Either on the bottom outside, the top outside, remember page numbers just go on the outside. But once again, you can just go front and back because most of you are going to do your homework front and back. If you're one of those strange ones, not strange, but special, who only want to use one side, okay, it's your choice. You can do one, then nothing on the back because you're never going to write on the backs, and then 2, and then nothing on the backs, you're never going to write on the back, and 3. But most of you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, remember the pages. But once again, you only have to put the chapter in the front. Okay? You can probably imagine if I'm grading chapter 9 homework, just think the extra time it would take for me to figure out where chapter 9 starts. This will just help the TAs and I as a grade, and you, if we refer back to a certain section in homework and go, oh, no, I did awful in that, instead of you having to look through the front. Takes a little bit. No, just because you're only putting chapters, not sections. So I think you should have plenty of space just in that very first one. So I would just turn the page, start right away. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. To that end, kiddos, let me go ahead and get you the homework assignment so we can talk about the headings as well for tonight. My screen stops freaking out. That's not a good place to see it. Let's go. Website. tinyurl.com/UFMath, where you guys went to go fill out your forms that are hopefully in as of 11:59 some seconds last night, if not earlier. There is a homework sheets category, and this does tell you how to get to homework sheets, but can I just give you a quick heads up? It's going to be a much better thing just to bookmark the class folder, because the class folder, if you bookmark it in your phone, on your computer, etc., It's going to be where I keep the homework or the class notes from each day. And I just have chapter 1 notes, and every day I save a new copy that's fully updated through what we covered for that day. So it's not like each day is separated, it's just all together as a compilation of what we've been doing in class. The class notes are going to be there, class homework sheets are going to be here, handouts. The graphing calculator handbook, I think, is already in there, because that's the one handout. I guess there were worksheets as well, but that's the one handout I've given. Homework sheets. If I were you guys at the beginning of a chapter, I would go ahead and open this and I'd take a picture of it. Then you don't have to keep on going back to it. It's up to you. Maybe you don't mind data or whatnot on your phone. But it might be easier if you guys just go ahead and make a quick copy of it or a quick picture of it, and then you know what's going on. We are splitting chapter 1 into 2 pieces, which is why there's a Precalc chapter 1A and a Precalc chapter 1B. There's 10 sections. It's a huge chapter, tons of review. So I decided to split it into 2. I want you guys to go ahead and turn to page 1. Question, do you have to put a heading every single time? No, it's in your book that has your name on it, right? Just don't get your spiral all messed up and the pages falling out. We'll be fine. So you don't have to write your name or your date or if you wanted a date in May. You don't have to write pre-calculus every time. This is your pre-calc homework folder. We're good. So just think the extra time and having you take on the table of contents and the page numbers, you're going to save on not having to do headings every day, right? Okay. So you're on page 1. Here's how I want you to do the homework. If you don't have to do this huge heading, then what do I want you to write? I want you to write, starting on the left-hand side of the paper, homework number 1. Get the homework number, not just the section, the homework number. The TAs associate the numbers with what you have or don't have. Make sure you get the homework number. Homework number 1, write it just as it shows on the homework sheet. Homework number 1, section 1.1. You guys can go and write it down. This is our homework for tonight. Page 8, and then the problem numbers. Why don't I just do 1 through 58 evens? Well, that stinks. You can't check it. Why don't I do 1 through 57 odds? Well, you can cheat on all of them. And question. Half of 58 is what, 29? Do I have fewer than 29 problems up there? Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a little annoying writing the problems down, but I'm narrowing the assignments because these homework assignments are huge and you don't need to do the entire thing to get the concept. Does that make sense? So I'm sorry for the numbers, writing down the annoyance, but believe me, I could assign a whole lot more and have you write a whole lot less.
And I can't see the numbers.
Okay, let me go to Zoom. Usually I just have you guys look at them online, but this time, just since we're getting the headings and all that stuff down, I'm letting you write it down. One more quick thing for both the composition book and the spiral. Every time we start a new homework assignment or a new section of notes, you are not allowed to start in the middle or even like the top third of a page. Meaning, if you have had to go onto a new side, a new page for notes or for homework, and you finish the rest of that page, sorry, it's done. You're not going to use it for any other assignment. Go to the next side. So if homework 1 takes this much space, you're not starting homework 2 here. You're starting homework 2 here. Does that make sense? Same thing with notes. If today, which you'll take some notes today, but if today on your page 1, wherever that is, there it is. Nope, that's page 3. If on your notes today, page 1, you take all of these notes and then you just need like 2 lines. It's done. This is tomorrow's notes. Does that make sense? Well, not tomorrow's notes. I should put it this one. Whenever we start a new section of notes. So if 1.1, we're going to finish it today. Homework is due tomorrow. It's all up on the board. But section 1.1, if 1.1 we finish and 1.1 is done, 1.2 goes here. But if you come back tomorrow, we're still doing 1.1. We keep going by all means. We only have to go to the new side when it's a new section. Are we okay? Cool. All right, guys. Homework spirals, there's only one thing I want you to do, and this is the weird part. I want you to turn to the back of your homework spiral. Moving forwards in your homework spiral is your homework, right? Homework 1, homework 2, homework 3. In the back of your homework spiral You know how sometimes you're doing things in class, or maybe there's a warm up on the board or bell work, maybe there's some group activity I have you doing, you need scratch paper. That's what this is for. I want you guys to go ahead and, I could call it bell work, but sometimes I have you use it for more than that. It's actually not really title, right? Extra work? That just sounds sad though, extra work. Practice work. Multi-purpose.
That's a lot of work.
Special. That's not really scratch paper either. Let's go ahead and do.
Enhancement.
Early morning work. Alright, that's about to already. Do you guys see the quote on the back there?
Yeah.
Let's just call it workspace. How about that? Just call it workspace. In notes, we're trying to put down polished representations of the concepts, of examples that illustrate the concepts and prepare you for homework. The notes are definitely a very polished place. If we're doing warm-ups, if we're doing openers, if I have you do like a group exploration or something and say, hey, use the back of your spiral for scratch, this is where you can be doing the working out the messiness. Does that make sense? Because openers, is that polished or is that you guys just trying? Right, it's just you trying. You might miss things. You might need to grade it in your colored pen and be like, oh, I don't get that concept, right? So this is our extra, this is our workspace. I want to say extra workspace, just sounds bad. Workspace. Now, with your workspace, I do want you guys to go ahead and just date. You don't have to date it. But I do want you to identify what section we're in. So if it was something like, hey, this is a 1.1 opener, this is a 1.2 bell work, or this is a 1.3 group activity. I do want you to identify for your purposes and for me. You do not have to do a new side every time, so we're not going to use a lot of space each time. You guys know openers go fast. But I do want you to just go ahead and do a quick line underneath each one. It's just easier for you and me to identify that you have it. Is that okay? Alright, cool kids, let's go ahead and put this homework spiral away. Let's get back to our notes and let's figure out what on earth is going to end again, huh? Oh, we're still doing our graphing calculator quiz. Sorry, I left that up because I wanted you guys to turn in your calculator worksheets and I forgot to put up the section title for today. You guys already have it in your notes, right? Section 1.1, rectangular coordinates. I'm going to update the backboard in a second. We did turn in those worksheets, so I'm leaving it up for period 5 so that I don't forget. I do use what is called a Cornell note system, but I don't use it as deeply as many other teachers do. Meaning, because of the breadth, I guess, of the topics that we have to go through this year, I'm not going to have at the end, if you guys have ever done Cornell before, usually at the very last page, there's some sort of reflection from the day. You have to go back, you have to try something, you have to dig deeper into something. I don't do that just because we have a lot to cover, and I see homework as your chance to dig deeper. Does that kind of make sense? Some of you are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and that's okay. You've never done real Cornell notes. Mine are kind of fake ones. For those of you with wide rule, college rule, use the pink lines as your guidelines. For those of you with grid, super cool. You can keep it all nice and organized and lined up and you're good to go. But I do want section number. I do want section title. On this side, I am going to put the big concepts of what we're covering. I'm going to put the information and the examples on the inside. You don't have to, if it's like, especially if it's a graph paper or a grid rule notebook, you don't have to draw the lines unless you want to. Some people do like drawing them. But I do want them nice and lined up so I can see it, and everyone does need for sure the section number, section title, volume. Alright, guys, let me make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to update your backboard as you guys get down. The Cartesian plane. The nice thing is, today should be pretty stinking easy as far as getting through notes. Homework might dig just a little bit deeper, so in order to prepare you for that, I might dig just a little bit deeper into some of the examples as well. We're going to see some ideas behind things that you've memorized in the past and probably forgotten, to be honest. But yes, I do want a full sketch. You do not have to literally write the word quadrant 4 times, but I do want the 4 quadrants label. I want the origin label. I am going to kind of build on the axes, though. Yes, I want you to label this an X, and yes, I want you to label that a Y. But I also want you to label this, let's do, red is usually my color for examples. I want you to label this part of the x-axis, the positive x-axis, and what would the other side be?
Negative.
And that makes sense, right? Because the negative numbers are over there. So I have the positive x-axis and I have the negative x-axis. Which corresponds to positive x's and negative x's. And what do you think I'm going to do with the y-axis? The positive y-axis and the negative y-axis. And guys, what single thing separates the positive from the negative on both axes? The origin. Good. The origin. And just a quick reminder, the x is the horizontal, right? The x-axis is the horizontal. And the tick marks on the y-axis are horizontal as well. Because y equals a constant. It's always a horizontal. Think the horizon, right? You look at the ocean, the horizon is horizontal. And then vertical is the y-axis. The tick marks on the x-axis are vertical as well. X equals a constant in the graphic. I'm going to change the directions down here. Plot the points. I don't know. I'm 70% confident that we could go ahead and plot all of these and get them in the right quadrants. 70% is a good percentage. But instead of plotting the points, we are going to do that. However, I want you to dig just a little bit deeper. Remember, I said homework looks a little bit deeper. I want you to go ahead and state the quadrant for the points. I want you to state the quadrant for the points before you graph them. I just want you to look at the points, each point individually. Think about the graph. So if you're in your notes, I don't just want you randomly writing quadrants. This is something you need to be able to refer back to. So you would write the point -1, 2 with a colon, what quadrant it's in. 3, 4 with a colon. If you want to be super snazzy, just to make things easier. You could name them. That's what they usually do in math. Point A, point B. Now you can think about what quadrant to put each of them in. Point C. So what quadrant or what description, because a quadrant isn't exactly applicable to the point that you're dealing with. And point E. Give it a couple seconds. Write down each of the points. State what quadrant they would be in, or what is the best way of describing its location. And then go ahead and go up to your graph and graph A, B, C, D, and E. You guys remember in your notes, it's okay if you use pen. There are times I make mistakes, so if you don't want to be super annoyed, maybe on examples, pencil is a good idea. Where is that? Quadrant 2? Okay, when you guys graphed, hopefully you went left 1, up 2, true? Okay. Because the x-coordinate shows us how far right or left, and the y-coordinate shows us how far up or down, true? Depending on the positive and negative. Letter B, what quadrant? Because the x's and y's are both positive, true? So you would go right 3 and up 4. Now, it must be wrong. It's not on the graph that's given to you. Don't ever think that. Double check. Make sure that you know what you're doing. But otherwise, be like, whatever, I can think outside the box. True?
Yes.
Nice. So point A, we have point B. Point C, where are we going?
Origin.
Nice. That is the best way to describe point C. It is the origin. And since the origin is the separator from all four quadrants, well, Yeah, we didn't put a quadrant for that. How about point D? What would you say? Okay, I heard a couple of different things. It is on the line. It's not my favorite. It is on the x-axis, a little bit better, but it is on the positive x-axis. That's exactly what I was looking for. It is on the positive x-axis, aka when x's are positive. And then point E, quadrant 3. Left 2, down 3, hopefully, yeah? And this does maybe correspond just a little bit to all students take calculus in the unit circle and trigonometry. What? Don't worry, that's not today. Okay, you guys got it? Let's go find something else somewhat easy, but something I can dig deeper into. Like, the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, don't worry, I'm not digging deep into the Pythagorean theorem. I would do that if I was a geometry teacher, but this is not geometry class. Pythagorean theorem. We're just going to write it down. We're just going to review real quick. But I want you guys to not just, well, let's start with the formula. What is the formula that you've memorized since forever? Okay, get that down. Now, what does it mean in context? Maybe raise hand on this one. What does it mean in context? Who's A? Who's B? What's C? Okay, keep going. Jacob, what do you got?
The two shorter sides.
Okay.
For A.
Good. And then?
You square them and then add them to get C squared.
And who is C? Got it. And this is all for only what type of right triangle? What type of triangle? Okay, so that is the Pythagorean theorem, right? The sum of the squares of the two shorter sides equals the square of the longest side. That's the hypotenuse. That's geometry. Now, what does that have to do with the distance formula? What does that have to do with the distance formula? We have until 45, right? Why does it take so long to remember? Okay. I don't think you guys need to see the Pythagorean theorem. Make sure the right triangle, two shorter sides, A and B. Does it matter which one's A, which one's B, technically? No. Because addition is, what's that property that says I can do it either way, whether A was the first or the second? It does have something to do with addition properties, that's true. I haven't heard the right one yet. That's kind of the idea. Commutative. Commutative. The commutative property of addition, you can do A squared plus B squared, same thing as B squared plus A squared. Anyway. What does that have to do with the distance formula? It's the whole foundation of it. It's where it comes from. But some of you are probably thinking, but I don't see a triangle. But I see a hypotenuse, don't you? But instead of naming the hypotenuse C, I'm going to name the hypotenuse D for distance, because I'm applying the idea of the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the distance between 2 points. Don't you guys usually have them like, I don't know, x1, y1? And x2, y2? Something like that. D is the distance between, but I'm saying, it's actually a hypotenuse. But then the question is, where are its legs? Now, I made honors think a real long time about this. I'm not going to make you guys think quite as long or as hard, but anybody figure out where the legs are? Draw them? Where? How could you describe to me how to draw them? Yeah.
Let's go over X to
I could go to x2.
Yeah.
That's true. So he's saying go over x2, go up to y2, and as you go up, couldn't you think about that vertical line? Okay. Maybe part of that is a leg. How can we get another leg? Up y1. I like it. Good descriptors. And over x1. I like it. Now do you guys see a right triangle? Because if you have a horizontal line, if you have a vertical line, they're going to obviously meet at a right angle, sure? So then what does that get us? If I want to use Pythagorean theorem, I need an expression for this leg, an expression for that leg, not A, not B. Think about what you have. Think about what's been drawn. How can I, well, I guess the one thing we didn't draw was y2. I apologize. Let's get y2. How could we express each of the legs? Yes. But I'm trying to actually figure out where the distance formula comes from. So what part of the distance formula? Some of you remember it. You're like, oh, d is equal to, or d squared is equal to, depends on which one you memorize. So think about what part of that formula gives me, for instance, this horizontal leg.
Or you could get your y1, x2, and then x1, and y1, and then
Use those.
Yeah.
No. You need to use those. The x1s and the y1s and the x2s and the y2s. How do I use it, Jacob?
You do y2 minus y1 squared plus x1 minus x2 squared equals c squared.
Okay, question. Why is he subtracting y2 minus y1? Por qué, por cual? How come? Why subtract y2 from, or y1 from y2? They're not just tick marks. They're distances. From what? The origin. y1 is how far up from the origin. y2 is how far up from the origin. Didn't you guys do segment subtraction? If you have y1 from here to here, if you have y2 from here to here, how do you get the in-between? And subtract, right? y2 minus y1 will get the leftover with the leg. So, what did he say that's going to help me with getting the other leg? Hold on. You guys know the distance formula. That's weird, right? Do I do y2 minus y1 then x1 minus x2? What do you do instead? You always keep them going the same direction, right? Hold on. What's the problem if I do the littler one minus the bigger one? It's going to be a negative. Well, hold on. Let's see. Is that going to actually make a problem? To correspond it to exactly the distance formula that you guys have been used to since forever, I'm just trying to see, can we understand where the distance formula comes from? And the distance formula says d squared, hypotenuse squared, is equal to leg squared plus leg squared question. Just a little louder. I heard some of you already say it. Why is it not a problem if we subtract these in the same order we do the y's? Even if the picture is something like this where it would be a negative number. It's squared. It's irrelevant. So yes, we could do x1 minus x2, but for memorization purposes, it's easier to do y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, and say always do it the same way. In Pythagorean, though, it's not going to matter. You're going to square it anyway. Where does it matter? Where does it matter, the positive and the negative, as far as subtracting x's and y's? If it's not squared, and what really popular formula you guys have learned since Algebra 1 has a subtraction of y's, a subtraction of x's, and it is allowed to be a positive or negative slope. Rise over left, y2 minus y over x2 minus x1. That one, the sign does matter. But in distance, it's not going to matter as much. And that's actually really important because we're going to write the other form of the distance formula. Some of you guys are like, that's not the one I had memorized way back when. What's the one some of you memorized? Exactly. Square square root both sides, right? This is the one a lot of you are probably more familiar with. X2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1. Both of these are valid. Both of them have or contain the idea of the Pythagorean theorem. And some of you more mathy ones might just be momentarily confused because you say, wait a minute, if we really get this second one from the first one, shouldn't there be a plus or minus? If you square root both sides? And what would your response to that be? It's a great question. Should there be a plus or minus? If you need to square root both sides. Mathematically, we would say yes. So why is there no plus or minus when you memorize the distance? Because distance is always considered to be positive. So we just keep it positive. It's in context. In context, only positive makes sense. So kiddos, with that, do you think that you might be able to apply these formulas now that you have them to finding the distance between 2 points? And the answer would hopefully be yes. But I just want you to consider, maybe for some of you that are more visual, it might be a little easier sometimes, 1, 2, 3, if you, 2, 3, 4, forget the distance formula, to go ahead and maybe draw a picture instead. And to say, hey, to find the distance, all I need to do is figure out how long each of the sides are. Oh, no, that's a 3. I can't see my own graph. And do Pythagorean theorem. Give me 1 second. Simplify, but we're done. Okay, there is one more formula. 2. Section 1.1. But I'm pretty sure the midpoint formula, you can find it and use it for homework, and we'll make sure you got it tomorrow. Sound good? Okay, so does that mean homework's not due? Oh, no, homework is due. There's an easy formula, midpoint formula. We'll get it into our notes tomorrow. It's in the section, clear as day. Just gotta find it. Bye, guys. Thanks for letting me go over a lot of logistics today.
Sorry. Listen. Oh, no, I need to study. I hope there isn't a question like there is a question.
If there's a lake, I'm just gonna.
I'm gonna die. Like there's nothing.
You guys, so let's start with the front.
What question about the
Thanks for checking.
Hey, what did you know?
Do you want us to print out that homework worksheet, Steve? No.
You can, if you want it, like to not have to worry about a picture or going online, but personal preference.